Welcome to the campus of North Idaho College and today's broadcast of the North Idaho College Public Forum. The crew is comprised of North Idaho College television students. Your moderator is North Idaho College political scientist, Tony Stewart.
Ladies and gentlemen, from time to time we have a very special guest on this program. We've been very fortunate over the past 12 years, and I think today is a very special day for us. We're so happy to welcome to this program and to our campus Ms. Carole King, who, as you well know, is an international recording star, and she is a songwriter, and she's been known for some of her albums in particular been so successful, such as Tapestry was very successful, and her latest album is entitled Speeding Time. In addition to her great success in the field of entertainment, she is also a person who is very involved and interested in issues, and we commend her for going beyond her career of performance to engage in important issues of the day. And she has dealt with a number of political causes, and her most recent one, or at least the one that she's on tour with us concerning, is to come by our campus to speak on behalf of the campaign of Senator Gary Hart for president. Ms. King, it's a pleasure to welcome you to our program, and thank you for taking time to be with us.
Thank you, and please feel free to call me Carol.
I will do that.
Thanks.
I'm happy to welcome to the panel to question our guest today three members of the panel. First of all, regular panelist Mary Lou Reed. Our second panelist has been with us a number of times and is Assistant Director of the Vocational Program at North Idaho College, Bob Brown. And our third panel member, regular panel member, Janelle Berg. And I shall invite Mary Lou to commence the questioning.
Well, Carol, you started singing and playing in Brooklyn, which is a long way from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Yeah.
But you now are a resident, as I understand,
Yes.
of Idaho.
Yes.
And would you please tell us all why you have chosen Idaho to take up your permanent residency?
I came to Idaho for the first time in, I believe it was 1975 or 76. A friend of mine was born here and brought me here, and I was really taken with the quality of life, the environment, the magnificent country, and with the people. There was a real independence of mind that I really liked, and yeah, you know, I can do it, whatever it is, I can do it, I can get along, you know, and I don't need to be dependent on you know, the government or big business or whatever to tell me what to do, and that really appealed to me. And the combination, I just basically fell in love with the state and its people, and I moved here in 1977, which makes me a native, right?
Right, right.
So this is my only home.
And you have tried to put down roots. Does your schedule permit you to be in Idaho for very much of the year?
Normally, very much more than it has this year, but there isn't always a presidential campaign that I'm out for. My work in California takes me there from time to time. Certainly I still have to go there to make a living, but I'm able to put down roots.
That's great.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Bob Brown.
Carol, of course, all of us have read about the dispute about your property in southern Idaho. I think there's a lot of people who feel that you have gotten this land and you're keeping the public from using their land and so forth. There's been a lot of stories about this. You want to give us maybe a little bit of the background and an update on what's happening?
The background is so complex. I have put together a packet of information. The root of this is Forest Service misconduct. They have basically no right to the piece of property that they're claiming is public. All their documents say that the road within my ranch is private. And the tactics that they've used, because there is no legal right, they have not brought the case to court, they have not tried to use condemnation proceedings or due process. In fact, I sued Custer County because they did not use due process. The Forest Service has been behind all of this. They've used various tactics such as harassment, threats, denial of permits, and even an assault on my person when I tried to get documents from my files under the Freedom of Information Act, which makes one wonder what they're trying to hide or what they're hiding. But it has been so misrepresented in Idaho that I would just, say to people that really want to know what's going on, the facts are available. The Inspector General of the Department of Agriculture is investigating the Forest Service misconduct, and the packet of documents that I've put together is basically a report to the Inspector General. So there's really misconceptions. I am not blocking anybody's public access to any public land. The only thing that I am controlling is access to my private property, which we all have the right to do, and which right I'm fighting for, not only for me, but for everybody that is similarly stepped on or lied about or harassed, and there are many people in Idaho.
Do you think we could have one of those packets for our library so that if anyone wanted to look at it?
Most certainly. I'd be
Okay.
happy to give you one.
Thank you.
Janelle Burke.
We've talked a little bit about your background in coming to Idaho, but I would like to ask you about your background in becoming interested in politics. You are an entertainer. Were you always interested in politics, or did you suddenly become interested as the issues seemed to be important to you?
Okay, first of all, the word politics is often calls to mind, certainly to my mind, dirty old men in back rooms with cigars and, wheeling and dealing. And unfortunately, that's really the way it is in a lot of cases. I've always been interested in making the world a better place, and my involvement in what people call politics is that. It's my effort to make a difference, to make a contribution, to make the world a better place. I first became active publicly when I did a concert for Senator George McGovern in 1972, along with James Taylor, Barbara Streisand, and Quincy Jones. And that was where I first met Gary Hart. He was Senator McGovern's campaign manager. And then I sort of, after Senator McGovern lost that presidential election, I was disheartened, if you'll excuse the pun. And I think it's inevitable. Right. I think a lot of people of my age and my generation and succeeding younger people became disheartened, felt, what chance do I have? I mean, I don't really think I can make a difference. Everything seems to be getting out of hand. And they sort of went into the woodwork. And when Senator Hart announced his candidacy, this attracted some people. And then people found out that he wasn't taking contributions from political action committees and special interest groups. And I, like a lot of people I've talked to, came out of the woodwork. I've heard that phrase used, by the way, all over the country. Yeah, we're coming out of the woodwork. Because there's a reason now to be involved. Here's a man who's refusing actual money because of his integrity, because he does not want to go to the White House with any intention but being responsive to the people and not the highest bidder. And that man speaks for me. Everything that he said and done, really, I'd say almost everything, I can't think of any exceptions, in his years as a senator from Colorado, has been consistent with my ideas of common sense and integrity. So I'm out there. I think he's going to represent me and a lot of people who feel as I do.
How do you feel that you as an entertainer are in a unique position to help in a campaign or to get your point across when you have a message? I am visible to people. If they say Carole King is going to be someplace, people will come and see, oh, what's she doing now? Whereas they might not come and see Jane Doe as readily. Many of them wouldn't even come and see Gary Hart because they are disillusioned with politics. Oh, another politician, boring, As an entertainer, I'm also a person, and I am speaking my views. But I do have a responsibility not to misuse my ability to attract people's interest and possibly my influence on them. And because I'm so conscious of that possibility, I always put out a disclaimer. I say, do not vote for Gary Hart because Carole King says so, but check out all the candidates. Make sure that you know what they're all about, and then vote as you please. I personally believe if they do that, they will feel that Senator Hart is their candidate, but if they don't, the important message that transcends the Hart campaign is get out, get involved, make a difference, you do matter, vote.
Carol, on that same line of what Janelle is asking, Gary Hart has made part of his campaign theme that it's time for a new day, a new change, and he's referring to both political parties. This has happened a few times in our history. What evidence do you have or information that you would share with our viewers that you think this is a legitimate slogan or theme of the campaign?
For one, Senator Hart has written a book called A New Democracy, in which he spells out specific plans, ideas, and programs. I've read the book, and his ideas do make sense. I'll just give a quick example on defense. The Republicans have traditionally said more defense, stronger defense. The Democrats have said less defense. Gary Hart is saying better defense, which doesn't necessarily mean more or less or bigger weapons. It means more efficient use of the defense funds. And he spells out, you know, his ideas, more use of conventional weapons, paying the military personnel better so that they're more involved and not just, oh, let's get through this 2 years or whatever I'm signed up for. That's just one idea. But he really is trying new solutions to new problems and some of the old ones to which the solutions haven't worked. And I think his claim of new ideas and the voice of the future is very, very valid. And if nothing else, I ask people to please at least check it out. And then if you don't think you can relate to it, that's fine. But everybody just sort of goes, new ideas, and, and they check back out and they vote for someone or think, well, I'll support somebody because, say the union leadership says support this guy, or some ethnic leader says, support that guy. That's not the right reasons.
Mary Lou Reed.
Carol, you're going around from college campus to college campus, and I'm interested in having your opinion on your characterization of the mood of the campuses right now. Are the young people apathetic, or are they responsive to talks about politics? How would you describe, if it is possible, can you generalize?
Definitely, I think I can. There is a latent idealism that is just waiting to be tapped, and when I come onto campus, I find varying degrees of that. Some campuses I find total apathy, but then I figure it's not total because they're actually there. They are in the room to hear me, but maybe they're there because they want to hear music, or they're interested in me as an entertainer rather than my political beliefs. But it varies from apathy to hesitancy. Yeah, well, okay, I like Senator Hart's ideas, but he doesn't have a chance. I mean, how can he buck the system? And my message to them is, you do have that idealism. Focus on it, really be in tune with it, and then go for it, because no one's going to do it for you. You do make a difference. And I find that when I leave a college campus, there is a strong energy boost. People really are hearing the message, and it's a message they want and need to hear. And not only young people on campus, but young people of all ages need to hear that message and need to focus on their own power.
When you say it's latent, do you feel this is because it's not really that cool to be idealistic right now, and so that it's kind of hidden, or are they just, as you say, tentative, maybe uncertain about their idealism?
I think more the latter.
And
yes.
so you really, your message is it's okay to be idealistic.
Yes, and not only is it okay, but we must, because if we settle for anything less than our ideals, certainly balance the ideals with pragmatism, and there's no question about that. You can't just shoot for the moon and not figure out how to get there. And there's a good example. I mean, we said, somebody in our government and in our lives said, what if we could actually go to the moon? And then somebody said, well, how would we do it? And then the next step was the giant leap forward, right? It's the same principle.
So you're really encouraging, as you were this morning at North Idaho College, to just really try
yes.
and go for it.
Yes. You have nothing to lose. If you fail, you learn, you pick yourself up, and you go again. And you've learned something.
For those viewers who have joined our program in progress, our guest is Carol King, who, as you well know, is an international recording star and entertainer, and she's on our campus today to discuss particularly the Gary Hart campaign for President of the United States. And we shall continue the questioning with Bob Brown.
Carol, since I'm sure everybody in the viewing audience, which includes a number of states, are tuning in today to see enjoy singing and want to know more about singing, what advice would you have for an aspiring singer? I'm thinking particularly of my daughter, who's 14. You said you started at 15. She's 14 and she loves to sing. What should she do if she wanted to pursue a career in singing?
The same advice, to try, to go for it, to figure out what'll work, to get some experience singing locally if she feels strong and confident enough to go out and maybe try to take her songs or send her songs to music publishers or recording companies. And it's a lot more difficult than when I first started, because when I started it was a fledgling industry. But it can be done. There are new people coming up all the time. Look at Boy George, God bless him. She doesn't need to look like that.
I was going to say, I'm going to draw the line there. Okay.
But it can be done.
Janelle Berg.
I know that you'd like to talk about some of the issues that you think are important. What do you think is perhaps the two most important issues right now facing the United States, our country?
That's a hard one.
It's a hard question.
Basically, that's like asking which symptom of a sick patient needs to be cured. But I think the sickness of the patient and the problems facing our country relate to the control of our lives that's been
taken over by the big corporations working through government leaders such as Ronald Reagan and unfortunately I think also Senator McClure in our state. His list of his campaign contributors yields PAC contributions from Houston, Amoco, all the big oil companies and mining companies, and that's disheartening because one wonders who he's really representing. But that is the sickness that I think the control is very much out of our hands. The leaders that we have now are not responsive to the people as much as they are to the big financial interests. Grows out of that focuses for me on the nuclear threat, the threat that any minute we could all be obliterated. And I am not generally a fearful person, but it's real. It is really frightening. That is one of the main reasons I think that Senator Hart, that kicked Senator Hart over the line into saying, I have to run for president. I have no choice. He is alarmed about this type of threat. He has teenage children. I guess Andrea might have just turned 20, but his son John is 18. And he wants a future for those people, as I do. Again, I'm talking about Senator Hart, but these are beliefs I share, and that is a major concern of mine. I think there's a strong movement right now towards more nuclear industry, more nuclear weapons under this administration. I think that a lot of people are concerned about jobs. When people like myself say, I don't like the nuclear industry. I have ideas. Gary Hart has ideas. A lot of people have ideas for how to retain the jobs without it being nuclear. There's so much other alternative energy. It can be done, but we have to make a commitment and say, I really do care about the future of this planet. What are they going to do with all that radioactive waste? How can they account for it? Things like that concern me. And what if somebody pushes that button?
Have you been active in the nuclear movement, and in what ways?
I've been rather quiet about it, I guess. I did a concert, I participated in a concert that Jackson Browne did here in Boise, not here, but down in Boise, a few years back, a Water for Life concert. I have been working with the Snake River Alliance people down there to inform myself, keep informed of what the issues really are. And on May 20th in Boise, there's going to be an event. It's going to be called One Small Voice, which is the title of one of the songs on my new album. And it addresses the fact that we each do matter and we can make a difference and we all have the power of peace within us. And it's to benefit the work of the Snake River Alliance, which is to try to, keep the perspective, keep the jobs, keep the quality of life that we have, but to redirect it to more long-term thinking.
Carol, at the time we're taping this program, it'll air in a couple of weeks, but at this time it's prior to the Texas and California primaries and so forth. And Gary Hart started out doing remarkably well, and then he went into the primaries in Illinois, Michigan, New York, and Pennsylvania, and although he still came in second and received some delegates, he didn't win those primaries. And some of that analysis indicate that he's doing so well among certain segments of the population, the college graduates and
yuppies.
Yuppies and so
I love that
but
word.
that he's had some problem gaining support among some very important segments of the voting population, the black citizens and so forth. Is this simply because they just prefer, at this point of the process, another candidate, or is it something in Senator Hart's program that they oppose to?
It can't be something in Senator Hart's program because his programs are of great benefit. He has been consistent on civil rights, for example, on his votes and work in favor of civil rights for blacks, for everybody, but certainly the blacks have been right in there. The other thing is that, the mudslinging begins, right? Walter Mondale and or the unions say, Gary Hart voted against some bill, and because the unions have made up their minds that the union leadership, I stress, made up their mind that Walter Mondale was their candidate and endorsed him right flat out, that by necessity meant, okay, we're endorsing Walter Mondale, we're not endorsing Gary Hart. That has hurt him in states where there is a union membership that is not independent thinking enough to go against what their leadership says. And I'm still not certain why the union leaders have come out so strongly against Hart and for Mondale, other than they maybe expect special favors
and they can't expect Gary Hart to give them special favors. What I did see when I campaigned back east, because I'm from New York, I went back to New York and Pennsylvania and Illinois. I was in those states. I didn't go to Michigan. Is I saw people who might have voted for Gary Hart, but were afraid to because they were told by their union leadership that, and it is mostly union people, I think, you know, the workers, that no, don't vote for Gary Hart, vote for Walter Mondale. I also saw a question that people are just, he is new, he is change, he represents the future. And a lot of people are not comfortable with it, no matter how good it may be. They would rather stay with something old, no matter how bad it may be, than go with something new, no matter how good it may be. And I think one of the reasons he will do better, and has done better in the West, and in New England, for example, is there are more independent thinkers. And that's one of the things I love about this state, too. I think the people will come through for him.
Mary Lou Reed.
Well, Carol, do you find as you become more and more politically involved that the music that you're singing is changing? When you're looking for new material, are you looking for more message-oriented songs, or are you trying to mix? How do you make this combination comfortably between your profession and your what is almost a vocation but is still an avocation?
Yes. And it will stay that way, may I add. I have
you have no
plans.
desire to run for public
I'm cured
office.
if I ever thought of it. I went to Washington. I don't want to do that. I find that in my work is, my job is an entertainer. That means my work is to entertain. And I don't think people want to hear messages all the time. At the same time, I think it's important to give them a little bit of a message, some of the time. And the new album, for example, is a sprinkling of things with a message. There's a song in particular called Chalice Borealis, which I wrote with my husband. And it deals with the Cypress mine down there in Custer County and some of the feelings we have about that. It's a message, but there's also songs like Standing on the Borderline, which I wrote with my first husband, with whom I still work. And that's just, you know, it's a love song. And so I try to have a balance, a little bit of everything, but my job is to entertain, and I hope I'm doing that.
And are you writing almost all your own songs?
I always do,
yes.
I've only recorded one that I didn't write, which was written by my daughter, Louise Goffin, and her father, Jerry Goffin, and another man. So mostly everything other than that I sing, I've written.
I just have to ask a simple question. Is it difficult? It has to be to play the piano and sing at the same time.
It's like driving a stick shift. You learn
get used to it?
Yeah.
Because it's very effective.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bob Brown.
As a follow-up question to Mary Lou's question, of all the songs that you've written, what is the one song that you are the most proud of? Not your favorite necessarily, but the one you're most proud of.
Right. It's hard to say proud. Proud is probably exactly the wrong word to describe it. The song You've Got a Friend is a very special song to me because that song came through me. I watched it write itself, and I remember as I was writing it, I was saying, I don't want to stop to tape it because I'll lose the flow, but I hope I remember it. And it was just coming. It was a gift from above, I think, and through me, I'm honored to have been the person through whom it came. It's a very special song to me. It says a lot to me and from me.
Since I think that's almost everyone's favorite song of yours, it seems like when I talk to people, let's rephrase the question if I could. What is your second favorite song?
That's like saying which of my children is my favorite. It's hard to answer.
Okay.
Janelle Burke.
One of the unique things about Idaho, and you mentioned before that you were attracted to its beauty and its independence and the quality of life. Do you have something that you would like to tell us about your feelings with regard to the wilderness?
Yes, ma'am, I do. I think Idaho's wilderness is a very, very valuable resource. It's a renewable resource. It does provide income in the form of jobs, tourists coming. And while I'm very well aware that there is a timber industry and a mining industry, which are really the basic opponents of wilderness, and, you know, some people who like to snowmobile and trail bike and stuff like that in the wilderness, I think that the perspective needs to be viewed. I have lived in other places, and I know a lot of people who value Idaho's wilderness for what it is, though they're not Idahoans.
I have supported all the efforts to have as much wilderness as possible in our state. I am dismayed by the efforts to give that wilderness away and turn it over to the interests that want to basically rape it.
Do you feel that the long term, when one is looking at it from the long term, that the wilderness is the appropriate use of much of that property?
I think it's not only appropriate but mandatory.
Land.
We have so little left in the world, let alone our country. I think it's really important to preserve what little we have. Theodore Roosevelt, in the beginning of the century, had the foresight to create a Forest Service and to create areas that were set aside. Thanks to that, we still have some. Frank Church worked for so many years to make sure that that was preserved. And again, I'm dismayed to see the work of Frank Church, who was just a great statesman and one of the finest we've had from Idaho, just being undone as rapidly as possible. I am concerned.
Lou Reed.
Would you like to follow through with a comment then on McClure's wilderness bill? I think you testified in
Yes.
Washington, D.C. on the bill.
As in Washington, and before that in Boise when they had the local hearings. My husband and I both went to Boise for that. I oppose the bill as it stands now. I have urged people who do oppose it to speak out. Again, the same message: you do matter. Let them know how you feel. I think it needs to be dealt with. The wilderness needs to be dealt with. It needs to be protected. But I don't think that's Senator McClure's intention, and I think the bill should be killed and rethought.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're out of time.
Oh, no.
The program went so fast. Carol, thank you for being here today and sharing your time with us and your comments, and both to the students on campus and on our program. And it was very thoughtful for you to do that.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. You're all you've asked wonderful questions, and I appreciate your interest.
Ladies and gentlemen, our guest has been Carol King, who is an entertainer, an international recording star, and she's been with us to discuss some of her work in the field, but also to appear here to discuss the candidacy of Gary Hart. As I indicated at the beginning of the program, she has a new album out entitled Speeding Time, and we want to mention that fact to you too. And again, thank Carol for being here. I hope you've enjoyed our program and that you'll be with us again next week at this very same time when we will discuss what we believe to be an issue of significance. And until that time, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
The North Idaho College Public Forum can be seen at this same time each week over this station. This production was videotaped earlier by a North Idaho College student crew for viewing at this more appropriate time.